Hello everyone, welcome back to Fistful of Goats. And let's start this video off by saying, okay Finja, will you shut up now? Yeah, my friend from locals has been watching this video for a long time, so let's get into this. This is Pure Invoked. Something I'm going to be honest with you, just sounds wrong to me, as someone who's played Invoked for like nearly 10 years now. Because to me, Invoked's always been the deck you play with another deck, I guess. But yes, with the new support, it is very much playable Pure, and I had a great run with it on Sunday. So without any further ado, let's get on with this. Starting things off, 3 copies of Alistair the Invoker. So yeah, we still are playing 3 copies of the original Alistair, and in fact I really like that this deck didn't do what some supports have done and make the original monster basically irrelevant, or at the very least a minor part of their own deck, as a lot of the combos in this deck do require original Alistair to go into. For example, the most optimal play in this deck is to go Alistair into Solomon Great Mirage, use the fusion spell to fuse them into a new fusion, which then sets you up for some link and fusion plays. So yeah, Alistair can add the fusion spell to your hand upon summon, and acts as a not once per turn semi-honest in your hand, and you can discard him to buff your invoked fusions by 1,000 points, not once per turn, meaning that this card can help you push for game if you're going for direct attack. But in my opinion, the most important part of that is it gives you an out to the Lunarlight Towers fusion. Yes, they can wipe your board with the effect, but with the amount of resource recursion you can do in this deck, it's not difficult to stick a monster that can beat over their towers, especially using this and the new Alistair to pump it up. Backing that up, we have 3 copies of Alistair the Reminiscent. Now, I will admit, I don't like that this card doesn't class itself as Alistair the Invoker anywhere, and a couple of the games I lost on Sunday were because I had this card open up, not the original Alistair, which meant I couldn't do certain combos. However, it can still summon itself by targeting a Spellcaster or Fusion, making it a great extender. It buffs where it targets by 1,000, and it gives you more access to Invocation, and unlike the original Alistair, this also gives you access to Invocation Sword for additional fusions on your turn, or to spring the new Hyper Invoked Aeon on your opponent's turn. And backing them up, we have the 2 invocations, because you don't want to play 3, it's too bricky, but you want to see this multiple times, so having 2 is really good. It both gives you any fusion if you fuse from the field, but it also gives you an additional fusion, it gives you a better fusion for an invoked fusion, as it lets you use cards from either player's graveyard as well, which means not only can you use your own graveyard to set up for other players that involve the Banish Zone, but you can also take cards you don't want in your opponent's graveyard out of play. The most prominent example I can think of is taking out one of the powerful graveyard effects from Rolad. For example, Grifo, or if one of the rituals hit the yard, you can use this to take them out, especially the Demolition of Chaos. Not as much the BLS, but to take out the Demark or the Black Chaos is still really good. Then we have for the final Invoke cards 2 Magical Meltdowns and 2 Invoked Swords. Now, I should be playing 3 Meltdowns, I know. I ordered the card last week, it doesn't come yet. So your Meltdown, it gives you access to Alistair, and it makes it impossible for your opponent to interact with your fusion summons. Basically a branded Lost for the archetype. And yes, it is annoying here as it is in branded. Invocation Sword, which I finally got a second one of, is probably the best in the new support, because not only does it give you access to another fusion summon, it lets you recycle the fusions you banish for other effects, and can also recur both the original invocation or an Alistair monster, both in the same turn. It being a quick play that gives you access to Hyper Invoked Aeon on your opponent's turn, meaning not only can you heavily disrupt their board by banishing 3 monsters or any other card on their field, but it also lets you rip 3 from their extra deck if you make it with 3 fusions, which you always will with this card. For more support for the Invoked package, we have 3 copies of Divine Spirit of the Law, AWAS Divine Spirit of the Law. This card, if you banish it from your hand or your field, can get you into an Alistair, and if you banish it from the field, you get an extra normal summon, meaning you can go through both Alistairs and solve the special summon of the new Alistair to use Alistair 3 times in one turn. In addition to this, if it's sent to the graveyard, it can give you access to another fusion. And it being a wind gives you access to the best of the new fusions, the one that allows you to extend your plays the most. We'll talk about that when we get to the extra deck. And then we have access to 3 copies of Sacred Spirit Sword IWAS. Now most of the time you're using this just to summon items from the deck as like an emergency teleport, which gives you access to the bonus effect of a bonus Alistair. However, this card can also rip one from the opponent's deck or dump an Alistair, giving you access to more fusion plays or making the Hyper Aeon extra deck rip even more painful for your opponent. Also, this is kind of embarrassing, but when you're searching for either this or the other sword, please make sure you get the right sword for the right effect and don't do what I did in one game. Oh. And finally, because we have one terraforming, I'll be honest with you, this will probably be another copy of the field spell once it comes in the mail. And finally, one copy of Vercum, the Divine Spirit of Artifice. This card gives us access to another copy of Invocation of the Sword, and it can special summon itself if you have an Alistair on the field, which can be either the Alistair I just showed or the Alistair in the extra deck. However, you only play one copy of it because all these effects only go off when you special summon it, which you can do with an Alistair on board. So if you hard draw this and lose access to your Alistair, it's just a body that does nothing. In addition to this, however, it has one use no matter how you summon it, and that's the ability to protect your fusions from interaction. As if your opponent plays a card in response to a fusion effect, you can send it to the graveyard to negate it. It's also light, so in worst case scenario, you could make Macabre and hope Macabre plus your hand traps are enough to hold on your opponent for a turn. Granted, not as powerful as that was in 2018 when they first came out, but I did win one game in the grind just with Macabre. And that's it for all the engine cards. Everything else is non-engine. So we have 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Giant Spring. And yes, I do love irritating people that these 3 copies are wildly different. Now, at this point, this card is mostly just a Call by the Grave for Fuelos and Perulia. But against some rogue options, you actually can still disrupt their plays fairly effectively with this, depending on what you hit. For example, one of my matchups on Sunday was against Blue Eyes with the Primite package. So this helped me stop their Primite quick continuous spell, which made their field much weaker and much easier to break through. I am choosing to play 6 Mulcharmies in this build because with the more varied locals compared to a much more limited field in a bigger event, there are matchups where both of these are effective. For example, occasionally we have players who play Vanquish Soul, even though it's not really meta anymore, so this is insane against that deck. In addition to this, this one, Fu in particular, even if he's not very good, if you draw him going first, or draw him against this one's most from the hand, he is a wind, so you can still use him with Alistair to make the best extended fusion in the deck. Obviously, these all get cited out if I know I'm going first, game 2 or 3. I usually put in like Solemns and Dimension Fisher, because this deck doesn't care if its cards are banished. For more hand traps, we have 3 Ghost Ogres, which are decent against some things in the meta right now, and pretty powerful against a lot of the rogue options. Again, Blue Eye is the best example. This blows up True Light, which nukes their entire field. You can stop things like certain Cool Tune monsters and their field spell. It's good at stopping the Doomsday trap that is unbearable in this matchup. Yes, this deck can play through dual effects, but depending on your hand, it's a lot more difficult. And it's also a light, so again, worst case scenario, you can make a Macabre off of this and use it to negate with hand traps to just try to hold out for a turn. And finally, 2 copies of Draw and Lockbird. All decks these days search, so this guy can greatly hamper their play and reduce their hand size for the grind game. Honestly, once Toon comes and goes out of the meta, I hope they finally ban this card. I don't want it banned yet because Toon is borderline impossible to beat without this card for most decks. But once that threat's dealt with, yeah, please ban this. And I also play 2 non-hand trap board breakers. So 3 copies of Sewer Polymerization. Yes, I do run both Garua and Mud Dragon, but this is actually even more cool if you use it to make an Invoked Fusion, because all the Invoked Fusions usually require either Invoker or the other Alistair and a card of a certain attribute. So you can use this. Yes, you only get one thing off the board usually, but in some matchups that could be really good. Particularly against Cool Tomb, because they can't respond to Sewer Poly. You can use this to take off the Negating Dragon. I forget its name, I think it's Zenma or something. You can use this to get that off the board. That's one piece of their interaction taken care of. And I chose to run Forbidden Droplet. Before anyone says that, yes, I know Forbidden Crown is better in this deck. I only have one crown. You need at least 3 for that to be effective. So, and this card is still really good because with the recursion of Alistair the Invoker, recursion of Invocation, you can often have 2 cards in your hand you're happy to discard to stop 2 effects. Then on your next turn, you do the Invocation loop again, put Alistair back in your hand, eventually get the sword, and use sword to get an Invocation back in your hand. So you aren't really losing much with this card. And also, one thing I was put this deck is, I drew a lot of doubles on Sunday, which I was happy to pitch to this. For example, I drew 2 of the same hand trap, which I couldn't use. I didn't need the extra Alistair for the extra buff, so that was something else I'd have to get rid of. And that's it for the main deck. One thing I may change in the future is a main deck a Dimension Shifter, because this deck plays really well under Macrocosmos effects. And even though I hate that card, it's scummy, you do what you gotta do to win sometimes. For the extra deck, it's quite straightforward. For the links, 1 Almirage, 1 Madness, 1 SP, and 1 Proxy F Magician. So Summon Great Almirage, you link off Alistair to make this. So now you've got an Alistair in grave, and this on the field to fuse into the new monster that requires a fire and Alistair. And also, if you totally brick, you can just make this and hope for the best. Proxy F Magician is really good in this deck, because not only can it give you a fusion summon by itself, but it also lets you get an Alistair to the field from your hand if you draw too many. And it's a fire itself, so there are a couple of good fusions you can make with this. SP is the most flexible spot in the deck. You could also play Invoked Caliga if you wanted to. But I like this card because it can, in a grind game, it can do a lot of disrupting. It'll bash something on its summon, and you can bash itself and something from your opponent's board each turn in the grind, which did come up in one game, not on Sunday, but the last time I played this deck, where both me and my opponent were basically in a top decking mode, and I kept using this to remove their one way to win from the field every single turn. And Invoker of Madness is actually really cool because you don't actually need Alistair to make it, just 2 cards of different types and attributes, which means you can use a dead hand trap to make it. Not just it counts up as Alistair, but it also gives you more access to Invocation whenever you summon a fusion towards it. And it also, because it classes Alistair, you have to use it as fusion material to carry on your plays if you don't have access to the original or the new one, or you need more plays than usual. In addition to this, you can also use it to fuse from the graveyard with one of the new fusions, because again, it's class Alistair there as well. Actually, let me just confirm this, make sure I'm not lying there. Yeah, that's correct. So, this can also let you push through a lot, as if your opponent does get rid of things on your board, you may still have one way to fuse in your graveyard. Then for the fusions, we'll start with the old ones, which need Alistair the Invoker, 1 Mechaba, 1 Elysium, which needs any invoked monster, but it's still on old ones, I'll put it here, 1 Raijin, and 1 Aguideos. I don't play the fire one anymore, as anything it can do, I think other folks can just do better at this point, because how big they are, and how much you can buff them with the new Alistair. Macabre, it's technically an Omni Negate, as you can just, if you discard a card of the same type that your opponent plays, you negate and banish, which not only can stop something important, but also remove some recursion options from a lot of decks. Again, this card's not as good as it used to be. It used to be the biggest boss in the deck, now it's just a fringe option you make sometimes. What's more important is Invoked Elysium, which becomes every attribute that's on the field and can banish any invoked fusion to Dark Hole with a banish the opponent's field. So you just choose this card, banish it, and banish everything on your opponent's side of the field. Unless they go a Divine Beast, which with the new Rasp book coming out, could be a thing in the future. Invoke Raijin, it's a book of moon on both players' turns, and I'll be honest with you, its main goal is to get banished to use other effects in the deck. And finally, Invoked Aquados, a decent option going second, as it can pop monsters, and you can use your monsters in the grave to give it a buff, to push for an OTK. And that is all the original Invoked cards we play in the extra deck. For the new ones, we have the monster himself, 2 copies of Hyper Invoked Aeon. Not only is he massive at 3800, but he can also rip 3 cards from the opponent's extra deck if you make him with 3 fusion material, and 3 cards from the opponent's side of the field anyway. And with the new support, getting that 3 material in the bash to breathe the sword on your opponent's turn is super easy. But also more importantly, at 300 attack points, any Alistair means this card can beat over the Lunar Light Towers. In fact, let me say this for the record, why did they give Lunar Light the third spot in those decks? Why didn't you give it to Fluffle, the fusion deck from that generation that actually needed support? But I digress. Oh, also before I forget, he can also, quick play, change every attribute in the field to one you choose. This can mess up some opposing plays, but it also means you have a more diverse option of cards you can use super polymerization on. We have one copy of Baberon. Its main purpose is just to get Vercum into my hand for extension, but it can also debuff the opponent monster attack points in the graveyard. I mean, you can have push for an OTK, and it's got one of the biggest stats in the deck. I mean, you can use it to buff Pure Invoked, sorry, its name's blanking on me, Invoked Aquarius. We play one copy of Oceanus. It's another Macrocosmos effect when it's in the extra monster zone. I mean, you can shut off opposing graveyards with it. It's got a big body at 3k, and it's fairly easy to make. And the start of the show invoked Sorath. This is the best extender in the deck. You make it off the Sol Mirage, sorry, the Sol Mirage, and then an invoked monster. It can then bring back a monster from either player's graveyard, which we use to extend. Most commonly, what we do is we make this, use the fusion spell to bring back Alistair to our hand, discard Alistair for its pump effect, then bring Alistair back. That gives us access to Madness and the rest of the combo. But more importantly, it can also be a fusion spell in the graveyard, which not only gives you an additional extender if your opponent disrupts you, but also puts more invoke cards in the banish pile, which means Sword has an easier time making Aeon on the opponent's turn, which means you can break a lot of boards or give them heavy disruption by moving 3 important pieces from the extra deck. The best example of that I did was I banished all 3 essential pieces of a Fiendsmith decks. Fiendsmith board, which means I had to deal with the other engine of Mitsurugi, so yeah, that was pretty powerful. Also, with the ability to recur banish cards, this card can give you a fusion every turn if the matchup goes long. And finally, we have the 2 super poly targets, Garua and Muddragon in the Swamp. Now, Garua is a great card. Is a great card draw that can take out a lot of boards, but I think Muddragon is actually better in this deck because it can change attributes. I mean, this card can essentially give you access to every single invoked fusion, provided you have access to Alistair and the fusion spell. And that is the main and side. To main the extra, the side deck, as usual, is tailored to my locals, so don't take this side deck as the end-all be-all if you're going to a larger event. 3 sphere modes deal with the Moonlight Balls that put out multiple monsters. I'll be honest with you, after playing this card, I think I changed for Lava Golems, as them getting all 3 out isn't as common as I thought it would be. Speaking of which, this card's going to be nuts when the new Ra support comes out. For more destruction, we have Lightning Storm and Harpies. Deals with the chess deck very well. Labyrinth is seeing some roguish play thanks to its synergy with Harmonia. So this is good taking care of their back row. And using Lightning Storm just as a Regeki is also pretty decent. And speaking of board wipes, 3 evenly matched. Again, one of the best going second cards. If you want your opponent's board going second, you can set up a pretty powerful invoked field when you go first. And with some resources lost to this, yeah, good luck breaking through that board. For going first, we have 3 copies of Solemn Strike, sorry, 2 strikes and 1 Judgment, and 3 Dimensional Fissures. So Dimension Fissure, like I said, this deck does not care about its cards being banished because it uses that zone diffuse. And the Solemn Brigade, there's still some Power Patron decks around in my locals, so stopping a Pendulum Summon is really powerful. Judgment is just a blank no to a summon or a spell trip effect. And it's a good card to side out your Fuolosis for when you know you're going first. So overall, this deck I thought was really good. It's probably the best deck I own right now. It does sometimes struggle against the very top of the meta, like Cool Tune, but against most other decks, it's so versatile, it extends so much, and it has so many different options, it's a really powerful choice. Thank you all for watching. The next scripted video will be out next Monday. And once again, Finja, I'll be happy now. Leave my comments alone. Thank you, everyone.